Sworn off people forever, the lonely woodsman was changed by 3 strangers winter brought him Jace Rowan. Had lived alone for as long as he could remember. The frozen world of Frostwood had always suited him, quiet, empty, and predictable. Snow drifted endlessly across the jagged mountains, and pine forests stretched farther than the eye could see. To most it was a harsh and lonely place. To Jace it was home. He had learned to live simply. His cabin, built from frost-stained logs, sat on the edge of a frozen ridge. Smoke curled from its crooked chimney, and inside the walls were lined with shelves of jars filled with preserved fruits, herbs, and small gadgets. A single chair sat by the fireplace, and beside it, his robotic companion, Twig, hummed softly. Twig was small, with 4 multi-purpose arms and a pair of glowing blue eyes that could light the darkest corner. Jace sometimes wondered if Twig understood him, and though it had no voice, he felt less alone with it around. Jace had sworn off people long ago. The memory of betrayal from settlers who once sought to use him and his knowledge for their own gain still burned like an invisible fire in his chest. He had promised himself he would never let anyone close again. The silence of the forest was safer than the company of humans. That winter had been harsher than usual. Snowstorms lashed at the cabin for days, and the wind screamed like a creature lost in the mountains. Even Twig struggled to navigate the deep drifts. On one particularly bitter night, Jace sat by the fire, sipping bitter herbal tea, and listened to the storm howl outside. He was almost lulled into a rare sense of peace when a strange light flickered on the horizon. At first he thought it was the reflection of the moon on the ice, but it moved, slowly, steadily, cutting across the snow like a glowing arrow. Jace frowned. Nothing in Frostwood moved so purposefully during a storm. He stood and peered through the frost-covered window. The light was heading straight for his cabin. Twig clicked and rotated its arms nervously. Jace shook his head. Probably nothing, Twig. Could be just a meteor or a reflection. But the light grew brighter. Then, with a loud crack, it slammed into the snow near the edge of the ridge. The ground shook and snow sprayed into the air. Jace grabbed his coat and flung open the door, feeling the bite of the cold against his face. There, half buried in snow, was a small hovercraft. Its sleek metal surface was scratched and dented. Steam hissed from its vents. And emerging from the wreck were 3 strangers. The first was a tall, thin figure with green-tinted skin and wide amber eyes. She carried a bundle of glowing plants, carefully wrapped in her cloak. She smiled, though her teeth were sharp and unfamiliar, and said in a lilting voice, "Are you home?" The second was shorter, human in appearance, wearing a tattered coat covered in tools and gadgets. His hair stuck out in every direction, and his hands were smeared with oil. He looked tired but alert. He nodded to Jace. "We need shelter. Storm's bad." The third was clearly not human. It looked like a humanoid robot, its body sleek but slightly crooked as if it had been damaged in the crash. Its head tilted, and its glowing eyes blinked in patterns Jace had never seen before. Assessment, environment hazardous. Require warmth and repair, it said in a voice that echoed softly. Jace's first instinct was to slam the door. He could not let strangers in. Not after what he had learned about people, that the storm was harsh, and he knew the snow would kill them if he left them outside. Twig whirred and hovered nervously at his side. Jace hesitated. "Fine," he muttered. "Come in, but don't touch anything unnecessary." The strangers stepped inside, shivering and dripping snow onto the floor. Jace quickly guided them to the fireplace, handing them rough blankets. He watched them carefully. He could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the tension in their bodies, but something about them was different from ordinary humans. He couldn't place it yet, but he felt a spark of curiosity, one he hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," said the green-skinned woman, bowing slightly. "I am Luma, and this is Kerr Nico." Jace grunted, avoiding introductions. He busied himself with making hot tea, muttering instructions to Twig to fetch extra blankets. He could feel the warmth of the fire, but it did little to ease the tightness in his chest. "Where are you from?" he asked finally, unable to stop himself. "Far," Luma said, her eyes shining. "We are searching for something important, something that will save the forests of Frostwood." Jace blinked. Save the forests? He had lived here all his life. The forests were already alive. He didn't see how anyone could save what already was. Kerr, the human-looking one, spoke up. "The trees are dying, slowly. Machines and weather are changing. We came to help." Jace frowned. Machines and weather? He had seen strange things in the woods before, but nothing like what they described. Something in the back of his mind whispered, Maybe this wasn't a normal human problem. Maybe it was bigger. The robot Nico tilted its head. Energy readings confirm instability in surrounding forest. Immediate action required to prevent collapse. Jace leaned back, rubbing his face. He had avoided people for so long that even the idea of helping strangers made him uneasy. But curiosity tugged at him. The forest was his life. Could these strangers, strange as they were, be connected to it in a meaningful way? The storm raged outside, and they had no other place to stay. Reluctantly, Jace allowed them to sit near the fire while Twig examined the damaged hovercraft. Luma unwrapped her glowing plants, which lit the cabin with a soft green glow. Jace couldn't deny it. It was beautiful, like frost caught in sunlight. Hours passed in silence. Outside, the wind shrieked, and snow piled against the cabin walls. Inside, Jace watched the strangers with a mixture of suspicion and fascination. He noticed small things. The way Luma touched the frost-covered wood as if she could feel its life, the way Kerr worked with his tools, silently repairing minor damage to Nico, and how Nico occasionally tilted its head, scanning the cabin as if it remembered something from before. Jace realized something unexpected. He hadn't felt this interested in people, or non-people, for a very long time, and he hated that feeling. Then came the sound, a low, metallic hum from the woods outside. Jace stiffened. Twig rotated its sensors toward the window. The hum grew louder, rhythmic, and heavy. Whatever it was, it moved with intent. "Do you hear that?" Jace asked, his voice low. "Yes," Nico said calmly. Unidentified large-scale entity approaching. Jace swallowed. He wanted to say it was nothing, that the storm was playing tricks on him. But deep in his chest he felt the old thrill of danger, the kind that had once made him a survivor. "Stay inside," he said, more to himself than anyone else. But part of him knew. Tonight, nothing would be the same. The three strangers looked at him, silently acknowledging the unspoken understanding. They had crashed into his life in a storm, and now something else, something bigger, was coming. Jace clenched his fists, ready, even if he didn't fully know why. Twig's lights pulsed faster, sensing the energy outside. The hum grew louder, vibrating the cabin floor. The fire flickered as the wind pressed harder against the walls. For the first time in many years, Jace Rowan felt the stirrings of adventure, and for the first time he wondered if perhaps isolation wasn't the answer after all. Outside, the snow swirled, hiding the moving shape in its whiteness. Inside, the cabin glowed with firelight, the soft green of glowing plants, and the hum of a hovering robot. Three strangers, a curious woodsman, and a storm that would not end. This was the beginning of something Jace could not yet imagine. And then, just as suddenly, a shadow moved through the snow toward the cabin. The shadow in the snow had vanished by morning, leaving only a shallow trench where something massive had passed. Jace Rowan, normally calm in his solitude, felt a ripple of unease. Twig scanned the area with its small glowing sensors, rotating its arms in a meticulous pattern. "No immediate threat detected," it said in its quiet mechanical voice. Still, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was alive in ways he had never imagined. The three strangers stirred as the first light of dawn filtered through the frost-coated windows. Luma's green skin almost glowed in the morning sun, and her eyes flicked to the trees outside. "The forest is changing," she said softly. "We must move quickly if we want to reach the heart of Frostwood." Kerr rubbed his hands together, watching the snow drift down in delicate patterns. "I think the crash damaged some of Nico's systems. We'll need to repair them before we go further." Nico tilted its head and beeped, scanning its own body. "Repairs required. Structural integrity compromised. Functions limited by 12%. Jace frowned. He had survived countless storms, but he had never worked with such unusual companions. Their purpose seemed serious, yet something about them felt unearthly. He didn't know if he trusted them, or even if he wanted to, but he also understood that staying in the cabin would change nothing. The forests outside were not just beautiful, they were alive, fragile, and in need of help. By mid-morning, the storm had softened to a gentle flurry, and the group prepared to leave. Jace handed Luma a walking stick, carved from the durable branches of a frost pine tree. "Don't touch anything too fragile," he warned, his voice gruff but protective. They stepped outside into a world sparkling with snow and ice. The silence was deep, broken only by the crunch of their boots in the snow and the faint hum of Nico's systems. Jace led them along hidden paths he had memorized over years, paths that avoided the unstable ice and the dangerous cliffs. As they walked, Luma knelt beside a frost-covered plant and placed her hand gently on it. The plant shimmered faintly under her touch, and tiny shoots of green appeared where there had been only frost. "The forest responds to care," she murmured. "Not all help is about machines or tools. Some things need attention and patience." Jace glanced at her skeptically. He had survived on logic and skill, not magic or strange alien energy. Yet something about Luma's gesture made him pause. The plant looked alive, healthier than it had been before. Kerr, meanwhile, was tinkering with a small device, adjusting dials and pressing buttons. Sparks flew occasionally, but Jace noticed he was careful, precise. "These machines are old," Kerr explained. "Frostwood has secrets older than any human record. Some of its energy signatures are unusual. I want to make sure Nico can interact safely." Jace didn't ask what that meant. He had learned long ago that curiosity could lead to trouble. Still, he found himself watching Kerr's work with interest, even admiration. The man had skill. That much he could see. The journey continued for hours, and Jace began to see why these strangers had come. Frostwood was beautiful, yes, but it was also fragile. Trees were showing signs of stress, their needles brittle and pale, some groaning under the weight of snow in a way that seemed almost painful. Small streams of ice were frozen solid, diverting water from areas that desperately needed it. "The heart of Frostwood is farther," Luma said. "We must pass through the frozen hollows. That area is sensitive, dangerous. Only someone who knows the woods can guide us safely." Jace nodded reluctantly. "Then you'll follow me, but stay close." Twig hovered beside them, scanning every step, while Nico occasionally floated slightly above the snow, its sensors alert. Despite the cold, despite the unusual companions, Jace felt different. Less alone than he had in years. It was uncomfortable, almost like wearing clothes that were too tight. Yet it was also something he could not ignore. As they entered the frozen hollows, the trees grew taller and older, their trunks thick and covered with frost crystals. The snow muffled every sound, making the forest eerily quiet. Jace's instincts told him to be cautious. He had been here many times alone, but with the strangers, he felt a responsibility he hadn't felt for years. Suddenly, a low humming sound filled the air. Jace froze. "There it is again," he said, his voice low. "Something is moving. Something big." Luma placed a hand on Jace's arm. "It's not coming to harm us yet, but it watches. The forest is alive in ways you may not fully understand." The humming grew louder. Twig's sensors whirred rapidly. Nico's eyes blinked faster. Kerr muttered under his breath, adjusting a small scanner. "It's mechanical," he said finally. "Not entirely natural. Some kind of drone, maybe, or an ancient guardian." Jace frowned. "I don't care if it's a machine or a tree. If it gets in our way, we'll deal with it." The group pressed forward, moving carefully through the hollows. Suddenly, a massive shadow loomed above them. Towering over the snow-laden trees, a gigantic drone, or perhaps a hybrid of machine and nature, descended slowly. Its body shimmered with ice crystals, and its eyes, glowing faintly, scanned the group. Jace instinctively stepped in front of the strangers. "Stay behind me," he commanded. Twig zipped beside him, lights flashing in warning, but then something strange happened. The giant drone tilted its head, studying them silently. Luma stepped forward, holding out her hand. "It's not hostile," she whispered. The air shimmered around her hand, and the drone's hum softened. It hovered uncertain. Jace's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "I can feel it," Luma said. "The forest talks in ways you may not have listened to before." The drone's glowing eyes blinked in patterns, then it slowly floated away, disappearing into the deeper woods. Jace exhaled sharply, tension leaving his shoulders. Well, that was new. The group continued, and as the hours passed, Jace began to notice small changes in himself. He found himself laughing at Kerr's jokes, slightly awkward but genuine. He offered advice to Luma when she struggled with the frost-heavy branches, and even shared small stories of his own past, things he had never told anyone. By the time they reached a clearing, the sun was dipping low in the sky. The snow sparkled like diamonds, and the trees formed a natural cathedral overhead. Jace stopped and looked around. The forest felt alive, more alive than it ever had in his solitary years. The first step toward the heart of Frostwood. Kerr checked his devices, nodding. "Energy readings are higher here. Something important lies ahead. We need to be careful, but this is good." Nico scanned the area, its eyes flickering. "Environmental data confirms significant life potential. proceeding as recommended. Jace took a deep breath. He realized that, despite his years of isolation, despite his promise to avoid people, he didn't want to be alone anymore. These strangers, odd, different, and yet trustworthy in some unexplainable way, had begun to change something inside him. Twig floated close, its lights pulsing in time with Jace's heartbeat. He patted the little robot on its metallic side. "I suppose. Maybe we'll see this through together," he muttered, almost to himself. As night fell, the group set up a small camp in the clearing. Jace built a fire, while Luma tended to small frost-sensitive plants, and Kerr worked quietly on Nico's minor repairs. The warmth of the fire contrasted sharply with the icy world around them. For the first time in many winters, Jace felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Perhaps the forest could be saved. Perhaps he could trust again. And perhaps, just perhaps, the strangers who had appeared in the storm were meant to remind him that life, even on a frozen planet, was richer when shared. As they settled for the night, the hum returned, fainter this time, almost like a distant song. Jace looked toward the dark woods, knowing that whatever was out there would soon play a larger role in their journey. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. Outside, snowflakes danced in the firelight, and the forest whispered secrets that only those willing to listen could hear. Jace Rowan, the lonely woodsman who had sworn off people forever, was beginning to understand that strangers could bring more than trouble. They could bring change. And with that, the night deepened, carrying with it a promise of adventure, discovery, and bonds that no storm could break. The morning air was crisp and quiet, the kind of silence that felt alive. Snow glittered across the frostwood trees, and sunlight shimmered on frost crystals like scattered diamonds. Jace Rowan, normally a man of few words, felt the unusual weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He wasn't just guiding himself through the forest anymore. He was guiding 3 strangers, each with skills and knowledge he could barely understand. "Stay close," Jace warned as they moved through a dense part of the forest. The snow here was deeper, and the trees hung heavy with frost. Twig floated beside him, sensors scanning the ground for hidden dangers. Luma paused to touch a cluster of frost flowers. They brightened slightly under her hand. "These plants are indicators," she said. "They tell us which paths are safer and which are not. Follow me and we might avoid trouble." Kerr adjusted a small gadget strapped to his belt. "I've detected unusual energy readings up ahead. Could be old forest drones. If they're still active, we need to be careful." Nico's sensors blinked rapidly. "Probability of encountering mechanical life forms. High. Risk assessment, moderate. Recommend caution and teamwork." Jace nodded. He didn't fully understand the gadgets or Luma's strange plant intuition, but he knew his own knowledge of the forest was invaluable. Years of survival had taught him how to read the snow, listen to the wind, and sense hidden traps. Together they made a strange yet capable team. They entered a narrow valley where the snow was untouched except for their own footprints. Suddenly, a soft metallic clatter echoed from the trees. Jace froze and held up a hand. Twig spun, its tiny arms scanning the source. A trio of malfunctioning drones, partially frozen in ice, tumbled out of the snow. Their mechanical limbs jerked unpredictably, and they emitted high-pitched whines. Kerr stepped forward immediately. "Easy," he said. "They're not hostile." Mostly confused, but Jace's instincts flared. "Stay back. Don't get too close." Luma moved carefully. "We can help them. They're part of the forest in their own way." She extended her hands, and a faint glow spread from her fingertips. The drones hesitated, then stopped thrashing. Slowly, they began to follow her signals, moving more smoothly as their systems seemed to recalibrate. Jace shook his head in disbelief. "You're telling me you can? Talk to machines?" "Not exactly," Luma said. "But I can guide their energy. They respond to life around them." The group carefully led the drones out of the valley, past unstable ice patches and frost-covered cliffs. It was slow work, but they were safe. Jace found himself silently admiring their skills and realizing how much he had missed having others around. By afternoon, the sky had darkened and clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind picked up, whistling through the treetops. They reached the edge of a frozen lake, its surface covered in a thin, brittle layer of ice. "This is where the real challenge begins," Jace said, his voice tense. "The other side is unstable. I've crossed it before, but only alone." "We can do it together," Kerr said, scanning the ice with a handheld device. "The weight is uneven, but if we coordinate our steps, we'll be fine." Nico analyzed the surface. "Recommends synchronized movement and minimal lateral pressure." The first steps were cautious. Jace led, stepping lightly, testing the ice. Luma followed, holding Kerr's hand for balance, while Nico hovered slightly above the ice, scanning for weak points. Twig zipped along the edge, keeping an eye on cracks. Halfway across, the ice groaned ominously. A small crack spread from under Jace's boots. He froze, holding his breath. "Keep calm," he whispered. "Move slowly." The group adjusted, moving in careful rhythm. The crack widened, but didn't break. Slowly they reached the far side, breathing sighs of relief. Jace realized that, without the stranger's cooperation, he might never have made it safely. Once across, they entered a dense part of the forest where frost hung like lace on every branch. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wide and gnarled. Jace slowed. "This is sacred ground. People rarely come here. The forest itself protects it." Luma nodded, her hands brushing along the bark of the oldest trees. "I can feel it. The energy here is strong. This is where we must awaken the heart of the forest." Kerr glanced around nervously. "Awaken it? You mean it's alive?" "Yes," Luma said. "Not like you think. But it responds to harmony, trust, and intention." Jace frowned, feeling a mix of skepticism and wonder. All his life he had relied on what he could see and touch. This was different, yet he felt drawn to it, a pull he could not resist. The group approached a clearing where the snow shimmered with a faint blue glow. In the center stood a massive dormant figure, a biomechanical tree. Its trunk was wider than any Jace had seen, and its branches were tipped with frost crystals that pulsed faintly. Its roots spread like veins across the clearing, partially buried under ice and snow. "This is it," Luma whispered. "The Forest Guardian. It sleeps, waiting for recognition." Jace felt awe and fear at the same time. He had never believed in forest spirits or guardians, yet this was real. A mix of machine and life, frozen in time, waiting for something. "How do we awaken it?" Kerr asked. Luma turned to the group. "It requires harmony. All of us must contribute. My energy guides it, Kerr's technology connects with it, and Jace, your understanding of the forest completes the circle." Jace hesitated. "Me? Why me?" "Because you know the rhythm of the woods," Luma said softly. "You've survived here, protected it, and listened to it when others would not. Your trust is needed." He swallowed and stepped forward. Twig hovered beside him, its lights pulsing in encouragement. Slowly he placed his hands on the trunk of the Guardian, feeling the icy bark and the faint vibrations within. Luma began to hum a gentle tone, and a faint glow spread through her hands into the frost crystals. Kerr adjusted a device, sending a soft pulse of energy into the Guardian's roots. Nico hovered above, analyzing and adjusting energy flows. At first nothing happened. Jace's doubt rose, but then a shiver passed through the ground. A faint sound, like wind moving through metal and wood, filled the clearing. Frost crystals on the Guardian's branches began to glow brighter. Jace felt warmth spreading through his hands. The Guardian stirred, its massive limbs stretching slowly. The ice around its roots melted, revealing green sprouts pushing through snow.
"It's working," Luma whispered. "Keep going." Jace focused, listening to the rhythm of the forest.
He felt a connection he had never known, an understanding of the quiet strength of Frostwood, the life that endured even under harsh snow. Slowly, the Guardian's eyes, large and crystalline, blinked open. Light poured from them, illuminating the clearing like sunrise after a long winter. The forest seemed to exhale, and Jace felt a rush of exhilaration. He had never felt anything like this. The Guardian's awakening was not violent or destructive. It was a dance, a balance of energy, trust, and life. The group stepped back, awed by what they had achieved. Twig hovered near the Guardian, scanning it. "Stability achieved. Guardian fully functional," it said. The forest shimmered around them, alive and vibrant. Snowflakes danced, streams flowed again, and frost flowers bloomed, even in the cold. Jace Rowan, the man who had sworn off people forever, felt a shift inside him. The strangers had trusted him, and he had trusted them, and together they had awakened something greater than themselves. Luma smiled, tears in her amber eyes. "You see? Connection does not weaken you. It strengthens life on the shoulder. You were incredible out there. Couldn't have done it without you." Jace felt a lump in his throat, a rare moment of emotion breaking through his hardened exterior. He had always thought solitude was safety, but now he understood it had been loneliness. The Forest Guardian had awakened, yes, But so had something inside him, the ability to trust, to work with others, and to find hope beyond isolation. As night fell, the guardian stood tall and calm, its glowing branches stretching into the dark sky. The snow sparkled in the guardian's light, and Jace knew the forest was safe, for now. Yet in the back of his mind he could feel that this was only the beginning. Frostwood had deeper secrets, more challenges waiting. But for the first time, Jace realized he would not face them alone. Not anymore. And as he looked at Luma, Kerr, and even Nico, he understood that winter had brought more than snow and storms. It had brought companions who would forever change his life. Morning broke softly over Frostwood. The snow glimmered like diamonds, and the air was calm, carrying only the faint scent of pine and frost. The forest guardian, now fully awake, stood tall in the clearing, its luminous branches spreading warmth and light through the woods. Streams of melted ice flowed freely, and frost flowers bloomed where there had been only frozen silence. Jace Rowan stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the guardian's silent movements. He felt a deep, steady calm inside himself, a sense of balance he had not known for years. The lonely woodsman who had sworn off people forever was no longer alone. He glanced at the three strangers, their faces illuminated by the guardian's glow, and realized that the bond they had formed went beyond survival. It was friendship, trust, and something he had thought he would never feel again. Hope. Luma knelt beside a frost pine sapling, letting her glowing hands hover over it. "The forest is responding," she said softly. "Life spreads where it was weak. It's healing faster than we expected." Kerr adjusted a small device that pulsed in sync with the guardian's energy. "The systems are stabilizing," he said. "We've done more than just awaken it. We've repaired old circuits in the forest, allowing life and technology to work together." Nico floated nearby, scanning the guardian's roots and branches. "Data confirms environmental equilibrium restored. Probability of long-term forest survival high." Jace let out a long breath. "I never thought I'd see something like this," he admitted. "The forest, it's alive. More alive than I ever imagined." Luma smiled at him. "And so are you, Jace. You've opened your heart even a little. That's why this worked." Jace looked away, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. I just did what I knew was right." "Exactly," Kerr said, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. "Sometimes the right thing isn't about being brave or strong. It's about trusting each other." Twig floated around Jace, blinking its lights happily. The little robot's movements seemed lighter, more cheerful than before. Jace patted it on its metallic side. "Even you understand, huh?" he muttered, a faint smile breaking his normally serious expression. The group decided to rest in the clearing for the day. Jace built a small fire while the others attended to minor repairs on their hovercraft and equipment. Luma continued nurturing the frost flowers and young trees. Kerr recalibrated Nico and other tools, and Nico monitored environmental readings to ensure the forest guardian remained stable. For a while there was silence, broken only by the gentle crackle of the fire and the whisper of wind through frost-laden branches. Jace watched them all and realized something profound. He had spent so many years hiding from people because he feared being hurt, betrayed, or disappointed. But these strangers, so different yet so capable and kind, had shown him that connection could bring strength instead of weakness. As evening approached, the glow from the forest guardian spread across the woods, painting the snow in soft blues and greens. Stars began to appear above, twinkling against the deepening sky. Jace felt the old longing for solitude, but it had changed. He did not crave isolation anymore. He craved balance, the kind of quiet that came with shared purpose and trust. Suddenly, Luma's eyes brightened. "Look," she said, pointing toward the horizon. A faint shimmer moved through the air, a signal, delicate but unmistakable, spreading across the treetops. Kerr squinted at his device. Energy signature. Could be another part of a forest awakening. Or someone reaching out. Jace's brow furrowed.
"Reaching out?"
"Who? I don't know yet," Luma admitted, "but it feels welcoming, not dangerous. The forest is sending a message to whoever can hear it." Jace stood silently, sensing something he could not explain. Years of solitude had taught him to read signs in nature, to feel subtle shifts in wind, snow, and life. This was different. The forest itself was alive in a conscious way, and it seemed to be acknowledging them, thanking them, and inviting them to continue protecting it. Twig whirred, floating in small circles, its lights pulsed with the rhythm of the guardian's energy. Jace laughed softly. "Even you know this is special, huh?" As night deepened, the four of them gathered around the fire, sharing a quiet meal. It was simple. Dried fruits, nuts, and warm herbal tea, but it was enough. Jace realized that small acts, like sharing food or conversation, had once seemed meaningless. Now they felt like a thread connecting him to the world. "I never thought I'd see this," Jace said quietly, almost to himself. The forest, the snow, all of it, alive and strong. Luma reached out and lightly touched his arm. "You helped bring it to life," she said. "And you've brought life back into your own heart, too." Jace looked at her, surprised by the softness in her voice. He had not expected to feel understood, truly understood, by anyone in years. Maybe you're right," he said, almost whispering. Kerr chuckled. "Don't get too sentimental, Jace. We still have work to do." But even as he said it, the forest no longer seemed dangerous. The snow no longer seemed threatening. Jace understood that Frostwood, the Guardian, the frost flowers, and even the machines all depended on harmony, balance, and care. And now, so did he. Hours passed, and the sky deepened into night. Stars glimmered overhead, reflecting on the snow in 1,000 sparkling points. The forest guardian stood silently, a sentinel in the clearing, glowing with quiet energy. Jace found himself looking up, feeling small and infinite at once. "You know," he said quietly to the group, "I never thought I'd say this, but I don't want you to leave." Luma's eyes softened. "We can stay, if you like. The forest will need guidance, and so might you." Kerr grinned. "See? Told you trusting each other wasn't so bad?" Nico tilted its head, as if processing the new emotion. Agreement noted. Presence maintained for additional support. Jace felt warmth spreading through him, not just from the fire, not just from the forest guardian, but from the bonds that had formed. He realized that being alone had once felt safe, but it had also been empty. Now he had choice, companionship, and purpose. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint hum of distant machinery and life. Jace closed his eyes and breathed in the crisp night air. He could feel Frostwood breathing, alive and thriving, and he could feel himself breathing in rhythm with it. Finally, as sleep approached, he crawled into his cabin, feeling a rare sense of peace. Twig hovered nearby, dimming its lights as if to rest. Outside, the Guardian's glow illuminated the forest, showing that life could endure even in the harshest winters. Jace thought about the journey so far, the strangers who had entered his life in a storm, the challenges they had faced together, the awakening of the forest guardian, and he understood something deeply important. Sometimes, storms brought more than danger. They brought change, growth, and connection. The night passed quietly. When morning came, Jace woke to find the forest alive and shimmering with energy. Birds, small mechanical and organic creatures, moved through the trees, carrying life and motion. The streams flowed freely, reflecting the sunlight in glimmering waves. Luma, Kerr, and Nico were already tending to the forest, making sure the energy remained balanced. Jace joined them, feeling at home in a way he had never felt in years. For the first time, he did not crave solitude. He craved harmony, the kind that comes from helping, protecting, and trusting. "Looks like winter has passed," Jace said quietly, a smile on his face. Luma looked at him, her amber eyes bright. "And with it, your solitude has passed too." Twig whirred happily, spinning in small circles. Jace laughed, feeling the sound echo across the snowy clearing. The forest guardian shifted, its massive branches reaching skyward as if bowing to the sun. Jace watched it, feeling a profound sense of connection. He knew Frostwood was safe, for now. But more importantly, he knew he was no longer alone, and that made all the difference. The three strangers turned to him, and Jace realized that this moment, the calm after the storm, the glow of the guardian, the sparkling snow, the first morning after a long, harsh winter, was more than survival. It was life, vibrant, and shared. And as he looked at the stars above, Jace Rowan understood something he had never believed in before. That even a lonely woodsman could find a place in the world, and that some strangers, brought by chance, or perhaps fate, could change everything. Winter had brought the storm, the challenge, and the strangers. And it had also brought Jace back to life. The forest hummed softly, alive, eternal, and full of promise. And so did he.